Ukrainian defense forces repelled Russian attacks near Avdiivka over the past day under heavy fire from Russian aircraft and artillery. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Information is of 6 o'clock on the 7th of August. Details: over the past 24 hours, the Russians launched 30 missile strikes, 52 airstrikes and 75 attacks using multiple launch rocket systems on the positions of Ukrainian troops and civilian settlements. Russian terrorist attacks have resulted in casualties among civilians, both dead and wounded. Residential houses and other civilian infrastructure facilities have been damaged. A total of over 50 combat clashes took place over the past day. On the Severshina and Slobozhanshina fronts, the Russians launched mortar and artillery attacks on more than 35 settlements, in particular, Buchki, Remyak and Vesel Chernihiv Oblast, Saradina Buda, Sidorivka, Studenok, Basivka and Vlika Pisarivka, Sumy Oblast, and Hariv Kazaka, Streleka, Hatish, Potakono, Odradna and Balahivka, Kharkiv Oblast. On the Kupiansk front, the Ukrainian defense forces are holding back the Russian advance east of Petropavlivka, Kharkiv Oblast. The Russians carried out airstrikes near Petropavlivka and Podoly, Kharkiv Oblast. Over 10 settlements came under Russian artillery and mortar fire, including Fyholivka, Vorokna, Kindrashivka, Kucherivka, Kupiansk and Kyslivka, Kharkiv Oblast. On the Lyman front, the Russian troops carried out airstrikes near Bilohorivka in Luhansk Oblast and Spern and Rozdalivka in Donetsk Oblast. They shelled the settlements of Kuzmin and Bilohorivka, Luhansk Oblast, and Torsky, Verkhnekamiansk, Spern, Berestov and Rozdalivka, Donetsk Oblast. On the Bakhmut front, the Ukrainian defense forces are holding back the Russian advance northeast of Avdiivka. The Russians shelled more than 15 settlements, including Vashukivka, Bodanivka, Bakhmut, Ivanovsky, Klashivka and Pivnikny, Donetsk Oblast. On the Avdiivka front, Ukrainian defenders successfully repelled Russian attacks near Avdiivka while under constant aircraft and artillery fire by the Russians. The Russians shelled Avdiivka and Pervomaisk in Donetsk Oblast. On the Marinka front, the Ukrainian defense forces continue to hold back the offensive by Russian troops near Marinka and Krasnohorivka. The Russians carried out airstrikes near Krasnohorivka. They also shelled Krasnohorivka, Maximilianivka, Hiorhivka, Pobeda and Novomikhailivka in Donetsk Oblast. On the Shakhtarsk front, the Russian troops launched an airstrike near Blahodatna. The settlements of Vodian, Vuhledar, Odradna, Blahodatna and Rivnopil, Donetsk Oblast came under Russian artillery fire. On the Zaporizhia front, the Russian forces conducted unsuccessful offensive operations near Robotyne, Zaporizhia Oblast. They launched airstrikes near Malotokmichka, Robotyne and Orikhiv in Zaporizhia Oblast. The Russians shelled more than 15 settlements, including Levodna, Chervon, Zaliznikny, Pavlivka, Piaty Kotki and Kamiansk in Zaporizhia Oblast, and Nikopol in Dnepropetrovsk Oblast. On the Kherson front, the Russians carried out an airstrike near Olivka in Kherson Oblast. More than 20 settlements came under Russian artillery fire, including Mikhailivka, Respublikanets, Elvov, Dniprovsky, Velitensk and Novodmitrivka in Kherson Oblast. The Ukrainian Air Force launched 10 airstrikes on clusters of Russian military personnel and 4 airstrikes on Russian anti-aircraft missile systems over the past 24 hours. Ukrainian rocket forces and artillery struck 2 command posts, 2 clusters of Russian military personnel, 2 artillery pieces at their firing positions and an electronic warfare station. Ukraine's defense forces hold back Russian offensive in east and advance in south, General Staff report. Ukrainian defenders are holding back the Russian offensive on the Kupiansk, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka fronts. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces are maintaining their offensive on the Melitopol and Berdyansk fronts. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Information is of 1800 on the 6th of August. Details: during the day, Russian forces conducted 30 missile and 48 air strikes, carried out 32 attacks using multiple launch rocket systems on the positions of Ukrainian troops and on settlements. As a result of Russian terrorist attacks, civilians have been killed and wounded, residential buildings and other civilian infrastructure facilities have been destroyed. A total of 30 combat clashes took place during the day. The operational situation on the Volyn and Polishcha fronts remains much the same as before. On the Severshchina and Slobozhanshchina fronts, Russian forces launched attacks on over 30 settlements, including Buchki, Remyak in Chernihiv Oblast, Babalivka, Vyshenki, Svarkov, Timofivka, Pavlivka in Sumy Oblast and Odnorobivka, Kazakh-Lopan, Ohertsev, Varvarivka and Kotny in Kharkiv Oblast. On the Kupiansk front, Ukrainian soldiers are firmly holding defense, successfully repelling Russian attacks east of Petropavlivka in Kharkiv Oblast. Russian forces conducted airstrikes in the vicinity of Petropavlivka and Podoly in Kharkiv Oblast. Over 10 settlements, including Kamyanka, Novomlinsk, Zapadna, Petropavlivka and Kupiansk-Vuzlovy in Kharkiv Oblast, were hit by Russian artillery and mortar fire. On the Lyman front, Russian forces conducted airstrikes near Bilohorivka in Luhansk Oblast as well as Spern and Rozdalivka in Donetsk Oblast. The settlements of Kuzmin, Bilohorivka in Luhansk Oblast, and Torsky, Verkhnekamiansk, Rozdalivka in Donetsk Oblast were shelled. On the Bakhmut front, the Ukrainian defense forces are holding back Russian advances in the area northeast of Avdiivka. Over 10 settlements, including Orikovo-Vasilivka, Markov, Chasiv Yar, Predtekheim, Vilahora and New York in Donetsk Oblast were affected by Russian artillery. On the Avdiivka front, Ukrainian defenders successfully repelled Russian attacks near Avdiivka while under constant aircraft and artillery fire by Russian forces. Avdiivka and Pervomaisk in Donetsk Oblast were hit by artillery fire. On the Marinka front, the Ukrainian defense forces continue to hold back the Russian offensive near Marinka and Krasnohorivka. Russian forces conducted an airstrike near Krasnohorivka in Donetsk Oblast. They also shelled Krasnohorivka, Hostre, Hiorhivka, Marinka and Novomikhailivka in Donetsk Oblast. On the Shakhtarsk front, Russian forces conducted an airstrike in the vicinity of Staromayorsk. They shelled Vodian, Vuhledar, Blahodatna and Staromayorsk in Donetsk Oblast. On the Zaporizhia front, Russian forces conducted unsuccessful offensive operations near Robotyne in Zaporizhia Oblast. They conducted airstrikes near Mala Tokmachka, Robotyne and Orikov. Over 10 settlements, including Novodorivka, Malinivka, Huliaipol, Vesel, Mali Sherbaki and Pyatyi Kotki in Zaporizhia Oblast, as well as Nikopol in Dnepropetrovsk Oblast, were hit by artillery fire. On the Kherson front, Russian forces conducted an airstrike near Olivka in Kherson Oblast. They also shelled over 15 settlements, including Zoloda Balka, Novoalexandrivka, Dubchiny, Zimivka, Tokarivka, Kherson and Kizimys in Kherson Oblast. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces reported on August 7 that Russia had lost 249,700 troops in Ukraine since the beginning of its full-scale invasion on February 24 last year. This number includes 540 casualties Russian forces suffered just over the past day.